Do you ever wonder what you would say if if you had a fairy godmother or a genie in a lamp prepared to give you three wishes? It's usually three, isn't it? And really, you're not allowed to wish for more wishes on your third wish. That would be a caveat. What are your three wishes? My wishes are quite specific. I only wish to test my ideas to the ultimate, to destruction. And so, what I do at every opportunity is to invite people to tell me what I have said that is untrue, illogical, or immoral. Since it is well known that I rely on the Quran for the principles of secular Koranism, I think I am safe in being accused, safe from being convincingly accused of being immoral, since no one can can be more moral than God. And I am relying on a book that Muslims believe to be the Word of God. I say that the Quran is the best available guide to humanity, and I challenge people to tell me what better guide there is if they do not agree with me that the Quran is the best available guide to humanity. And it seems that not even the most Islamophobic of Islamophobes is capable of proposing a better guide to humanity. So my premise that Sharia is the best legal system for all of humanity must be correct. Nothing. I just don't see anything that is incorrect or illogical. So the next step is to ask myself, what what would be the best and quickest way the of effecting the implementation of secular Koranism? And of course, it would be to challenge the greatest intellect of the West, who hate my idea, to try and undermine my premises, which is that the Quran is the best available guide to humanity, and therefore and if they don't agree, they have to propose a better guide to humanity than the Quran. And I just don't think they can. People like Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, all the Islamophobes that you can think of, they can't they can't produce a better guide to humanity than the Quran. So what's a problem? So all I'm stuck with are people who just refuse to engage. I suppose they think because they don't engage, that if they don't argue, they can never lose the argument. So that is their tactic. And what does it mean for Western civilization if this tactic succeeds? In that I never get proper engagement from anyone. I'm genuinely surprised that nobody else has proposed the same thing. I'm genuinely surprised. Maybe it's just a matter of time before people start falling over themselves and saying, well, Sharia must be the answer. But I already know that I'm not the only one to have done so. Or this Anjum Chowdhury, but he's in jail just for proposing that. And I do remember a YouTuber or somebody I saw on YouTube saying Sharia must be the answer, even though he's not, even though he's not Muslim. So what is the problem with these Muslims? You would have thought that if they were being logical, they would fall over themselves and say, yes, I'm right. Let's go forward with secular Koranism, but they won't. And I think it's because they're afraid. And they would be using excuses like, I'm not even Muslim, I don't speak or write Arabic. But then they could say, well, in principle, I am correct. They may not agree with my interpretation, but then they'd have to say what the problem is with my interpretation. But they don't even want to go there or be seen to be engaging with me in public. So that's a problem. And so if I were to be granted a wish, I should wish for the engagement of Tucker Carlson, Sam Harris, and Douglas Murray. And I could carry on and mention Ann Coulter. They would have to be legally trained. I think the important thing is that they have to be American and legally trained, really. There's Alan Dershowitz, off the top of my head. And that's it. I really just want a series of interviews by people who are known to be intellectuals, lawyers, political thinkers. What about theologians? With regard to theologians, well, that would be, well, immediately the question would arise as to, well, which theologian of which religion? And I'm saying we should start with the Christians because the issue with Christianity is that it's idolatry. And I would expect Jews and Muslims to agree with me and say, yes, Christianity is indeed idolatry. And I do not know of any theological argument that can defend the Trinity against this accusation. Because the tried and trusted way of dealing with anyone questioning the Trinity is to burn them at the stake. And surely the liberal establishment is not about to restore this Christian practice of heretic burning, nor would anyone wish this practice to be restored. And so Jews and Muslims, or really I should say rabbis and Islamic scholars should be able to get together to agree with each other that Christianity is indeed idolatry. And so you see this kind of, what do you call it in sport? Is it semi-finals or something? Quarterfinals, semi-finals. And there's something in the World Cup. Is it to get the third position? I forget, but you know the idea, the process of elimination. And we want the quickest way of doing it. So we get the two religious groups that agree with each other on the oneness of God to eliminate Christianity because it's idolatry, and blasphemy because it is idolatry to worship a man. Anthropomorphism is idolatry. The harm of idolatry is that you pay the opportunity cost of being rightly guided by the Quran. And, and well, you cause yourself suffering and pain and injustice, revolution, war, all kinds of human suffering because you refuse to be guided by the Quran. And if you think you have a better guide, let's hear it. So let's assume that this does take place and these Jews and these Muslims, these rabbis and these Islamic scholars do what I propose and jointly condemn the idolatry of Christianity. And then it would have to be a showdown between Judaism and Islam. And isn't it obvious that Islam would easily win? In my previous stream, I explained why, if you really wanted to get to heaven as soon as possible, you would have to choose Islam, that there's just no other religion to choose. If you're taking the idea of the afterlife seriously, and what are you doing if you don't believe in the afterlife and can't take it seriously for long enough to hypothesize what religion you would have to choose if you wanted to get to heaven as soon as possible? I said that it cannot be Hinduism and it cannot be Buddhism because both both believe that the afterlife is reincarnation. And if you're good, you go to a better life, and if you've been bad in this life, you go to a worse life. But if you want to get to heaven as soon as possible, it cannot be either of these Eastern religions. It would have to be one of the three Abrahamic religions, and it's a question mark on Christianity because Jews and Muslims say it's idolatry. So we're left with Judaism and Islam. Most of humanity is Gentile, and the Torah is too hard for Jews to follow. And also, the Torah doesn't mention an afterlife at all. Um, and we know what happened in the time of Jesus and the dispute between the Sadducees and the Pharisees. The Pharisees believed in an afterlife, and the Sadducees said, well, it's not mentioned in the Torah, but we're the elite and the priesthood, and we don't care about the common people. But we know which of these factions survived. In fact, there were also the Essenes who were monastic, and it doesn't appear that being in a monastery assists your society in surviving. This is presumably in a monastery. It will all be, well, single sex, and if it weren't a single sex, I guess it would be a hippie commune, and then they wouldn't be monogamous, and there would be problems. So if you're taking the whole idea of the afterlife seriously and literally believed in it, you would have no choice but to choose Islam. So, bearing in mind that Islam wins hands down, and nobody can say a thing against what I'm um, they cannot argue against my propositions, and that's why nobody's watching, because they don't care. They don't care about religion, which means that all these Jews and Christians and Muslims and Hindus and Buddhists, they just don't care. They don't take it seriously enough to even argue about it, but they will argue in court about, who's racist, whether something's hate speech or transphobia or one of the silly speech crimes that have been created by intersectional feminism. But if you try to get them to discuss the theology of the Abrahamic God, you would get crickets. Christians don't want to discuss the Trinity because they know it's morally and intellectually indefensible. And insofar as Christianity exists in churches in the West, it is only because it is a business model of social clubs, incapable of maintaining morality, because it is not social clubs that maintain morality, but the law of the land that maintains morality. And we know that we cannot trust our corrupt and incompetent ruling classes to make up the rules as they go along. And this was what I've been trying to explain to Caleb Morpin. And to my surprise and horror, he is apparently not understanding what I'm saying. I understand that he's a busy man, and maybe theology is not one of his areas of expertise, but it is mine. But I think perhaps his reluctance to engage on the subject is deliberate, because he has Christians in his Centre for Political Innovation, and he doesn't want to alienate them. I think it's really as simple as that. And of course, America has this vague idea that they are in some way Christian, as Justice Brewer was trying to explain after the case of the Church of the Holy Trinity against the United States. But I'm saying that the Christian identity of the American Republic was in doubt from its inception, because Christianity was only used to defend the divine right of kings. And since America is a republic, Christianity was an anachronism, and that's why the founding fathers separated the church from their state. And here is the analogy I wish to make, that if there has been a death in a family, or death in a home, let's say, you need to remove the corpse, you need to bury the dead, or else there will be trouble. And of course, you need a doctor to sign the death certificate. And now there are two corpses in the house, the corpse of Christianity and the corpse of liberalism. And so we need something. Well, we know that liberalism was post Christian, and I guess Sharia must be post liberal if we want social conservatism again. But if not, we will continue to have intersectional feminism, which will cause degeneracy and dementia. Can a civilization, can an empire suffer from dementia? I would say yes. If you look at the history of the Roman Empire, you will see that the Republican virtue of Republican Rome was somewhat different to the decadence of Imperial Rome. When did Imperial Rome begin? It began with Augustus, who played with words a little, didn't he? He didn't call himself emperor, did he? He pretended that the republic was still there. And so instead of calling himself emperor, he called himself first amongst equals. But that's not possible. If everyone is equal, then no one can be first. It's a trap easy to fall into when you think of China, actually, because they have some weird idea called the Three Supremes, which is the idea that the people, the party, and the constitution, I think, are supreme. And, you can't have the Three Supremes unless they are some group singing songs. Perhaps I'm thinking of the Three Degrees or the Supremes. You see the oxymoronic nature of these words that nobody seems able to identify or recognize or respond to. I seem to be the only one. I can tell you there's no comfort in being the only sane person in a world gone mad, talking to only two live viewers. It does seem that Western man has lost all his senses. He's lost even the sense of self-preservation. You would have thought people in trouble would want to grasp at facts and logic as a way of solving their problems. And if they want to do something, they would understand that you can't just do anything. You have to do something that is going to get you a good result or a result that you want. But it's all a lashing out of a lunatic in an asylum in his straitjacket. And what I find so disturbing is that there's no one else to take control. And I think the problem is feminism. Feminism has utterly destroyed the internal furniture of the mask of Western man. He seems to think it is his right to demand that his nappy be changed, even though he is adult. He expects somebody else to tidy up the mess. Even Jews, they pretend that the Messiah is coming and they have nothing to worry about. Why would he come? Just because he's summoned? Is he the maid of all work? Oh, thank you for coming. Seeking genuine what? If everyone stroke everything is equal, she says, then excellence is not of any value, and thus advancement, or more specifically, life, is impossible. Well, egalitarianism means that no one will accept the authority of another person. So it means that you are, in fact, a leaderless rabble, and therefore not even a proper group at all. Because, I mean, a good example comes to mind in elections. So, you know that Democratic politicians, they like seeking votes from religious groups because they're easy. You know, once you get the mosque elder or the, maybe not so much Jews, because there's so many of them and that they're not exactly agreed with each other on you know, on things, because they're secular Jews and then they're the religious Jews, and even the religious Jews disagree with each other about the strictness of observance. And so, really, Muslims are an attractive way of getting votes, because once you get the mosque elder to support you, the mosque elder will get his congregation to vote for you, and you know it's less laborious. So just because you have a group with a leader, you you get the kind of respect that you wouldn't otherwise get if you were, a leaderless rabble. And if you want to think of an example of a leaderless rabble, then think of a snake with no head. But it's moving this way and that, and you don't really know which way it's going to go. But it's still alive and it's still moving around, but it doesn't seem to be moving towards anything. So this is something to consider in terms of the group that you are a member of. Obviously, it would be great to have a leader who is, wise and good. But if you don't have one, then you're just not going to get the respect that you want. And how do you know if your leader really is a leader? You would have, accountable leadership, and a leader who cares what you think, and kind of asks you if you're being governed properly, instead of people who call you names just for daring to ask questions or complain about things. And Seeking Genuine says, feminism is a perfect example of you're not doing what you think you're doing. I'm not quite sure what you mean by this. Perhaps you will explain. I don't know if you want to come on, but well, I'll post a link. So before I forget my wishes, my wish is basically a list of, well, people, what did I say? Tucker Carlson, Ann Coulter, Sam Harris, Megyn Kelly, or just anyone with I should say Piers Morgan, really. Yeah. Anyone capable or having at least the reputation of being a tough interviewer. So that's the list of my wishes. I mean, I'm saying I do really believe that my solution would work, and it would solve all these problems. But my problem is A, people refusing to take it seriously, B, people actually making a point of, who take it so seriously that they have conspired amongst themselves never to discuss my solution. And three people who don't seem to understand it. I think it's really very simple. I've been explaining what is in fact a mechanical problem. I mean, it is really as simple as the abstract equivalent of, well, if you want to fill your bath up, you need a bath plug. And if you don't have a bath plug, you will never fill up your bath and you won't be able to have a bath and you'll waste lots of hot water. And it's really a simple problem. Thank you. Thank you, Seeking Genuine, for saying you'd love to discuss it. I do appreciate that, and I know you're female, and that means you're so much more valuable than the males who either get so triggered that they can't talk about it, or have basically conspired not to discuss it. And I think they will be kicking themselves for not having thought of it themselves. Because really, it's not that difficult. Really, I think an 11-year-old could understand what I'm trying to say, except that there's, obviously a lot of, accumulated tradition, I suppose. I'm talking about, two religions of an empire, of a global empire that has not been properly examined because it cannot be properly examined from the inside. Christianity cannot be seen from the inside, and in the same way that you can't see yourself. You can't see yourself without a mirror. And that's why, women say things like, how do I look? Does my butt look big in this dress? We need a mirror. And we need a mirror that tells the truth and explains things in a way that is easy to explain. Why are people laughing at me? Have I got dirt on my nose? Spinach on my teeth? Something like that. We need someone else to tell us if there's something wrong. And really, that's what out groups are for, really. So I think in half an hour, I, I may have explained the problem, and I think most of it is denial and neurosis, and I think it can be easily got over if I can assure people that getting over it is quite easy. And once you get over it, you will find the motivation and the desire to implement the solution. But what I need are tough questions about my ideas. And it's well, I'm so grateful that seeking genuine guidance, perhaps I don't know what the third word is, but I'm very grateful that you're here. And of course, it's hard to acknowledge that we've been wrong for generations. Not that I'm saying that Westerners are the first one to experience this, because, well, China got rid of its monarchy in 1911 after I don't even know how many thousands of years of imperial governance, and they had a civil war to decide what kind of secular political ideology to choose. I really do hope it won't come to that. And I know there are lots of people who say, oh, we've got to let the whole thing collapse and build back better or something similar like that. But I do think a lot of people will die if you let the West become some kind of Mad Max society. A lot of vulnerable people will die. You know, when the hospitals break down, when the roads are not maintained and the bridges break. It would be nice to have an orderly transition if reasonable people would just understand their history. Granted, I am not American, but I think I understand it well enough. I don't see how an American could say, well, we need Christianity because we need Christianity to defend the divine right of our king to rule. And I'll just say, well, you're a republic. You're a constitutional republic with certain unalienable rights. Why are those rights said to be unalienable? Why did Jefferson say that there are certain rights that are unalienable? I think he must have meant that you cannot alienate what God has bestowed upon humanity. So I am saying that the foundation of the American Republic was, in fact, Islamic. And you can look upon the last 250 years of Western history as attempts to shake the dust of monarchy off the feet of Westerners. And surprise, surprise, the Chinese beat them to it. And that is why China is now more rationally governed than the West. And although China may be having low birth rate problems, at least the Chinese government has said that it would like 3 children from every married Chinese couple. It now has a 3-child policy, when formerly it only had a 1-child policy. But it has at least corrected itself, or is attempting to do so. It has, in theory, corrected itself. But as for the 3 supremes, well, maybe they could stop their constitution from sounding like the 3 degrees or the supremes. So thank you for your attention. It's been really helpful to get a response. I see Deja Vu You is here, who doesn't seem to accept my expertise in theology, but who is a better theologian than me? I'm not just a theologian of Judaism or Christianity or Islam. I am a theologian of all 3 religions, and I have constructed a narrative that I think will have an attractive outcome if what I propose is discussed and perhaps implemented before too long for the good of all humanity. Am I being grandiose? Perhaps. But I think in theory I do not see how I have been wrong.